Hey, this is Dr. Willie Jolley, and yes, you have only just a minute. I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon us, we can't refuse it. We didn't seek it. We didn't choose it, but it's up to us to use it. We must suffer. If we lose it, give account. If we abuse it, just a tiny little minute, but our eternities are wrapped up in it. Greetings to you at this incredible day of the 1st of August, 2020. I want to welcome you to the Jolly Good News Report, and I am grateful that you took time out of your schedule. And I want to say to you that we started this for a specific reason: to give people some uplift, some encouragement, some inspiration, some motivation, and some good news in a time of bad news, sad news, depressing news, and a whole lot of news that does not feed your spirit. So I wanted to give you something that will lift your spirit so that you could do more, that you could be more, you could achieve more in the midst of these challenging times. So welcome to Jolly Good News Report for the 1st of August and this first week of August, 2020. Now, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to start a watch party right now. Start a watch party. Say, hey, Dr. Willie Jolley's on. We're having a great day because he got some information to make your life better and to help you grow and go to the next level. Number two, I want you to like it. I want you to share it. Like it and share it. Start a watch party. Like it and share it. And if you're on YouTube, I want you to subscribe to my channel. I want you to share this with your friends and family. Put it out to Lottie Dottie and everybody, because we want to impact and inspire and empower millions and millions of people every which way we can. I got a little sign up here that said, even youth grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. I read that every day to inspire me, to keep me going. This, even in the tough times, you can grow weary, but do not faint. So this is a time to keep flying and keep growing and keep trying new things and reinventing yourself, which is one of the first things I want to talk about today. A piece from my book, Setback Set Up for a Comeback. Hopefully you've got a copy of this book, because this book is what everybody needs right now. A setback is happening to us all, but you need to get a copy of A Setback Set Up for a Comeback. Get it digitally or get the hardcover or autographed copy, and you can have it for a collector's item. The hardcover is a collector's item. Well, anyway, in the book, we talk about reinvention, and you should be thinking about, maybe I'm going to reinvent myself during this challenging time. I'm going to learn some new things. I'm going to develop some new things. Like one of the things I learned during this time is to cook. I had never learned how to cook. All these years, I lived with my mama, and then I got married, and my wife cooked. But now my wife is more vegan, and I still want to have some of the things that I like, so I started learning to cook. And during this pandemic time, I've learned to cook. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? Anyway, and I'm cooking food that I am enjoying. Seared salmon and pan-seared scallops. And, I mean, just new recipes all the time. So very excited about that. Now, let me talk about reinventing. On my daily radio show, and hopefully you listen to my Sirius XM show, which this week, today's show is going to be powerful. 4 o'clock, it's about philanthropy, being a friend of man, and it's a powerful show. You're going to love it at 4 o'clock, channel 141. But during my weekly show on the Get Up Mornings with Erica Campbell, every morning at 8:20 Eastern Time, 7:20 Central Time, and over 48 markets across America and online, you get to hear my messaging. One of the ones I did recently, as well as on my 1-minute motivational videos that you should be getting if you're on my newsletter. I did one about reinventing, and it's a 1-minute message about the lessons we learned from George Foreman. This is a great lesson. I love this. Outstanding, as I said, out of the book, an outstanding example of someone who reinvented himself is George Foreman, who holds the record of being the oldest person to ever become the heavyweight champion of the world. George Foreman grew up in Houston, Texas, and he was a teen, and as a teen, he was a big, wayward kid who became a boxer, but to keep out of trouble. He made the Olympic boxing squad in 1968 and won the heavyweight gold medal. He began a professional career in 1969 as a big, rough, tough fighter who never smiled and had very little personality. He dominated everyone he fought. He won the heavyweight title in 1973 by knocking out Joe Frazier. After that fight, he was considered invincible. However, in 1974, he fought Muhammad Ali in Zaire. And in that daring fight, Muhammad Ali used a new tactic called the rope-a-dope strategy to win the fight. It was George Foreman's first defeat, and he was devastated. He then went from bad to worse by losing another fight to a little-known fighter named Jimmy Young. This was a major setback. In the dressing room after the fight, George Foreman said he started seeing things, and he and friends and all his fighters and his trainers say he started acting strange, like he was delirious. But he said he was having a religious experience. That night, he quit boxing and decided to become a preacher. He gave his life to the Lord and said, I'm going to change my life. His boxing career was considered dead, and George Foreman was considered history. But he was not through making history. He went back to Houston and started a church and a youth center. And 10 years later, after using all his own funds, he realized he needed money to keep the youth center alive, so he decided to go back into the ring. When he started this time, he had a changed personality, a new person. He had reinvented himself. He became a new person. When he had retired from boxing, he was a mean, sulking, non-communicative guy. But when he came back, he had been transformed. He was a new guy. He was a friendly, enthusiastic, fun-loving, funny, and uplifting man. His first fight after his comeback was in 1987. He won that fight and kept going. He fought numerous times, and each time he won. He scored a knockout, and he made money for the youth center. And he was this new media personality. He talked to people after the fights. He laughed and joked, something he had never done before. He was quickly becoming one of America's favorite personalities and most popular people. He went on to create a grill and to become a pitch man for his grill, and he sold millions of grills, and he continued to fight. In 1991, George lost a very hard fight to Evander Holyfield, and many said that would be the end of his story. He was over 40, he was overweight. All the commentators recommended that George quit. He was just too old, but George had other ideas. He continued to fight, and in 1994, George started a fight, and in starting the fight, he startled the world. At the age of 45, he started the fight, and he ended the fight as the heavyweight champion of the world. Wow. He reinvented himself. We can reinvent ourselves. I want you to take this time during this pandemic and reinvent yourself. Do something new. Learn some new skills. Learn some new abilities. Realize that you've got skills and abilities you didn't even know you had. You have greatness inside of you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play an excerpt from an interview I did on the Kelly Wright Show. I want you to see this interview. It will inspire you. Oh, I always have to give you the stat of the week too. This week, if you're waiting for how many people got infected, nah. How many people died? Nah. Here's my quote and stat of the week. 10,900,000 people have been cured from the coronavirus and are at home with their families. 10,900,000. Wow. What a great stat. Okay, look at this excerpt from my interview with Kelly Wright. It'll inspire you. I thought that you should see it because it really was inspirational. Here we go.
Joining me tonight is my good friend Willie Jolley, and he needs no introduction, but I will introduce you. He's one of the top speakers in the world, one of the top motivational, and I like to say inspirational speakers in the world. Dr. Willie Jolley is really what he's accomplished by earning his doctorate. And Willie, it's good to have you on, man.
My dear friend, it's a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure, and a joy beyond measure. So thank you for having me on the program.
I love the way you just said that. Go on with your bad self.
Well, it's good to be, and I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad you're staying safe and secure and healthy and whole. So I'm grateful to be here.
And likewise, man, it's good to see you as well. I know that your beautiful bride is likely right there somewhere near to make sure that you're
very close. That's
okay.
Right.
Tell her I said hi.
I sure will, and keep me straight. And you know, my wife is a germaphobe, so she has really shut it down, and we have pretty much been in the house since March. And other than going to grocery store, and a few things like that. But we're grateful though that we're able to do programs like yours. I do my daily radio show right from here, my weekly radio show on XM right from here. So I do everything right from here. So thank you for asking about it. She's doing great.
Excellent. And look, we are living in a new normal that I've characterized as being quite abnormal.
Yes.
And out of that, these unusual circumstances has caused many people to fall into a pattern of fear. Some have fallen into a pattern of being overstressed and over concerned about things. And then we've seen people go to the streets protesting and politicizing the wearing of a mask. What do you say? How do you see the world as it is today?
Well, we're in an unprecedented time, as we all know, and we are in a time where we're seeing not just one crisis, but multiple crisis moments that by themselves would be front page. But we've got so much going on that it is unfathomable that we would think it would all happen at the same time. So we got a pandemic that is global, and then we are following that by economic downturn, followed by job loss, followed by racial strife, followed by social upheaval. And it all is happening at the same time. In fact, Kelly, I recently told somebody I'm waiting for the locusts to show up, okay? So we've got a lot going on, but how do you get through this? And how do people who are struggling, because many people are having to check themselves into mental health facilities. We've seen a rise in suicides. We've seen a lot of people who are depressed. And so what I've been doing is a lot of interviews and programs to try and help people through this. Many people know that I wrote a book called A Setback is a Setup for a Comeback. And that book went on to be a bestseller, a global bestseller. And that led me or gave me the opportunity to work with Ford Motor Company in 2006, 2007, 2008, when they were in a crisis moment. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. And they brought me in because of that book. And I worked with them 3 years. And in 2009, Ford was able to reject a government bailout and go from losing millions to making billions, in a time where the economy went down and where circumstances in America went down. What was the difference? It was thinking. And so what I have been sharing through the books and through the interviews and through the programming that we do on radio is that in crisis moments, you've got to be mindful of a couple of things that will help get you through it. First of all, understand the word crisis by its pure definition. Is one of the best definitions I've ever heard was from John F. Kennedy. In 1959, he gave a speech, and he talked about the Asian definition of crisis was very profound because it said, one, while you're in a crisis, you have great danger, but at the exact same time, you have a time of great opportunity. And that's what I believe this first is a great time of great danger, but opportunity. Second is that there are some principles that I shared not only in the setback book, but also in the follow-up book, Turn Setbacks into Greenbacks, about how you get through these and not just survive them, but thrive in the midst of them. If you do some historical analysis, you'll see that many great companies that we now know as Fortune 100 companies or major leading organizations started in either depressionary or recessionary times and challenging times. Disney, Uber, Facebook, Microsoft, General Electric, they all started in tough times. So there are opportunities for those who have the eye to see them.
That's great, Willie Jolley. The fantastic information. I want to stay with you and keep you for a little bit longer.
Sure.
Do you mind?
Oh, anything
right.
for you. You my guy. Okay, this is my folks. Y'all got one of the best in the business on with Kelly Wright. He is just incredible, and what a journalist, and what a man of faith, and and integrity and character. So if y'all don't know him, let me tell you, I know him. He's a great man.
I appreciate you, man. I'm just June's boy.
That's right. There you go.
We'll be back after the break, and we'll talk more to Willie Jolley. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to my good friend, Dr. Willie Jolley. And Willie, in the previous segment, you were talking about a couple of things. You mentioned panic, how it comes from the Greek word choke. And certainly this is an environment that we have like none other. And it's actually choking so many of us. One of the things that has become very disturbing on top of the pandemic has been the racial divide. I saw you post something on social media with regard to the George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd. It hurt all of us in such a visceral way, especially those of us who are Black living in America and know what it's like to come up against it with police. Even though we know there are great police officers out there, you always have in the back of your mind about that one who will not be so wise and so caring about us. And certainly, like I've experienced, you've experienced it. But what do you say? How do you address the nation right now that's going through this racial tension? And you also talked about leadership in the previous segment. And we find that leadership from the top is lacking in terms of healing the racial divide.
Well, a couple things. You're right. I've done a couple posts that have really gone viral, have started to trend. The first one I did was during the time when they were still rioting. And I felt I had to address that, particularly for many of the young people who were angry and didn't know how to focus that anger. Right. And I talked about my father taking me and my brother, 1968. He was a journalist, and he took us down to 14th Street right after Martin Luther King got killed, the day after, and there were fires, there was looting. We went to a giant food store near our home, about a mile away from our home, and people were looting, and the police had thrown up their hands and said, just take what you want. I said, Dad, can we go in and get some desserts? He said, no. He said, if you didn't buy it, it's not yours. I said, but they're giving it. He said, no. He said, your character and your integrity are not for sale and never to be compromised. Never forget that. And that was a profound impact on so many people. Since then, I've done another one where I talk about the whole concept of Black Lives Matter. We've heard lots of discourse. Some people are not feeling it, and some people are feeling it. And one of the reasons people are not feeling it, a lot of my evangelical friends, a lot of my white friends have said, I'm concerned because it says Black Lives Matter. That means that only Black Lives Matter, or that no one else, don't all lives matter? And I said, you know what? I taught a class at our church, First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, where you've been to visit. And so I taught a class on communication. And in that communication class, I say the impact of emphasis can have an impact on your full and complete discourse of a statement. I didn't say you stole that car. I didn't say you stole that car. I didn't say, hey, you stole that car. They say you stole that car. They say you stole that car. Every time I change the emphasis, the meaning change. So when you say Black Lives Matter, then many people will get thrown off because they think only Black Lives Matter. But as one of my friends had put a post, he said, Black lives aren't the only ones that matter. I shared with him that the emphasis was at the wrong place. It's Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
They matter. They matter. My kids matter. Your kids matter. Many of my friends who were white said they'd never had to give their children the talk. I know you know what the talk is. I know what the talk is. Every Black person I know what the talk is. When they get their driver's license, you have to have a talk with them. What to do when they get pulled over. Not if they get pulled over, when they get pulled over. Keep both hands on the steering wheel, pull the window down, pull out your license, and say, officer, what do you want me to do? So when I shared with that guy about the impact of inflection and emphasis, his whole perspective changed. He said, wow. Yeah. He put out another post right after that, said, my dear friend Willie Jolley educated me today that Black Lives Matter. They matter. And so many of my others, I made a point to talk to them because many didn't understand how we feel, the anger, the hurt. So what we're in right now is a reckoning moment. Here's the other thing. Kelly, I think it's profound, that Benjamin Franklin said something that was profound 200 years ago. He said, justice and change will not be served until the unaffected are as outraged as the affected. And we're seeing that right now. Near my home, they had a Black Lives Matter protest a few weeks ago on a Friday night. And my wife and I went with our signs and stood on the street. It was from the White House all the way up to Silver Spring in Maryland. I live in DC, on both sides of the street. 2/3 of the people there were white.
Yeah.
2/3. And what we're seeing is white, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, every culture coming out and saying, we saw that video and we were outraged by it and we realized it was wrong. So when you see wrong, as we celebrate the life of John Lewis, and he said, when you see wrong, you have a moral obligation to say something. And particularly people of faith, we must say something and say, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's what our leader, the carpenter from Galilee, taught us, to speak up for right, to speak up for good, and to make a statement when we see wrong. And so leadership at the top, at middle level, sometimes does not quite see it right. They don't get it. So what we've got to do is we got to lead where we are. Each one of us must make a commitment to not wait for somebody else to say that's wrong or this needs to be done. We lead where we are, right? In my book, one of my books, It Only Takes a Minute, Change Your Life, Kelly. Mm-hmm. There's a great little story, and I'll close with this little story, this part at least. A lady wanted to change the world, but she said it's too big. Well, I changed my family. They'll never listen to me. And she did nothing. But on her last day, she realized, if I could change myself, then maybe I can change my family, who can change the community, who can change the city, who can change the state, who can change the country, who can change the world. We saw that done with a lady named Mother Teresa, who decided to make a change where she was, and it impacted the world.
Powerful message, Willie, because it really does start with the person that we see in the mirror.
Yep.
And then we have to go out and effectuate the change. And one, by not being conforming to the culture, but being transformed by the renewing of our mind.
That's right.
And that's really what you've been teaching so many years. I want to go back to, you just reminded me of how on that day when Dr. King was assassinated and people protesting in the streets, and your father taking you to 14th Street to see what was going on, your father being a journalist. My mother took me out of D.C. to Hagerstown, Maryland. And when we came back to the city, she took me to the downtown area and said, this is wrong. This is not what it should have been. This is not how we elevate the conversation. And this is not how we bring people to that table of brotherhood, as Dr. King talked about. I will never forget that. Because of that, this is why I like having these kinds of conversations that you and I are having. And this is what so many people miss. And Black Lives Matter is trying to bring that to the table now. And to your point, where so many whites and blacks and people of color are still protesting at Black Lives Matter here in DC. It's a chance, it's an opportunity to really elevate that conversation and also elevate the awareness and the heart so that we can take that seat collectively at that table of brotherhood.
Absolutely. It's time for the beloved community, as Dr. King said. And where we do that is we each do a little bit, just do a little bit, do something in your sphere of influence. One of the things I just started doing, Kelly, was, when my wife and I, we were on your show at one of the premiere week, we have a Jolley marriage on Monday nights on Facebook Live, Happily Married Monday with the Jollies. And then Monday through Friday, I do a daily 1-minute video that is just exploding. And so I want to encourage people, if you will go to winwithwillie.com, you can sign up for your 1-minute video, a powerful, uplifting video, as well as you can see some of the other resources and the song that I put out. And Kelly and I both have something in common. We're both singers as well as speakers, and that's something that why we were friends. And then finally, Saturday mornings, in a time so much bad news, I decided to do a kind of the journalistic approach called the Jolly Good News Report on Jolly Good News Facebook page, and do it live on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. So we can give people some good news in this time of such challenging news, because what you just said was so true. Many people are struggling through this time, and they need some uplift. And I'm glad that they got somebody, you on national television, and I'm doing my little part on the internet. And
you're
so,
doing it, my friend. You're doing it.
So, you know, I'm grateful for that.
I got mad love for you, man. You know that. You and D, I love you guys. You are like a brother to me, even though we don't get to talk every day. I just appreciate you coming on the show. Got to have you back. And before I leave, you got to give me, it only takes a minute.
I figured you were going to ask for that. Well, I say this to all the viewers and everybody. You have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon you, you can't refuse it. You didn't seek it. You didn't choose it, but it's up to you to use it. You must suffer if you lose it. Give account if you abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but your eternities are wrapped up in it. Been a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure, a joy beyond measure for me to be with my main man, my friend, my brother, Kelly Wright. God bless you.
Love you, man. God bless you. Love
Thank you.
All right. We'll be back with more of the show after this.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview, and I hope it inspired you. I hope it encouraged you, and I hope it empowered you. And today I want to close as we celebrate the life this week of a good man who gave good news, who lived a good life, John Lewis. What a great man who walked the talk and lived the principles of Jesus, to be kind, be loving. And when people do evil on you, don't repay evil with evil. And he was such a powerful man who really did do the work of the Lord. Let's look at his life, use his life as a model for how we should live our lives. Be kind to people, be loving to people, share good news with people. If you got to get in trouble, get in good trouble, and be righteous about it. He, on his last day alive, he wrote a op-ed column for the New York Times and said, don't print it till the day of my funeral. And in that he said, while my time has come to an end here on earth, I want you to know that the last days and hours of my life, you've inspired me. You've filled me with hope and the information and inspiration about the next chapter of the great American story, when you have used your power to make a difference in our society. I encourage you to read the whole op-ed. You can find it online. And at the end of it, he says something that has just inspired me. When historians pick up the pen to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. That's what I want to leave you with today. Let love be your guide. This is Dr. Willie Jolley. Thank you for joining in on the Jolly Good News Report. And remember that for sure, your best is yet to come. God bless you. Bye-bye.